Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Joel from Easy Engineering, and welcome back to another video. So I'm actually really excited to be talking about this video, discussing this video today, because I think it's a really important aspect of mixing and music production that I think a lot of us overlook. Well, I hope not a lot of us are overlooking, but I can tell you right now that this is something I definitely overlooked when I first started making music and mixing music. And I think it was about 3 years ago that I learned this, and it's all to do with, I guess phase relationships within, mixing and mastering and everything like that. But essentially, it's the understanding of what the plugin companies are doing to their plugins to kind of bring a certain character to it, or bring certain, brightness or harmonics to a certain plugin, and which is why it's almost like a selling point in a sense. I mean, I'm not trying to say that they're lying to us, but I think it's definitely something that we overlook, and we just kind of get caught up in the hype of, a new plugin, a new, Waves compressor or SSL compressor or anything like that. But the reason we're getting, so caught up in the hype of all of it, and the reason we're all like, oh, this compressor sounds amazing, and it's because they're essentially emulating a lot of the hardware plugins, such as obviously the Waves CLA2A compressor, which is an emulation of the UAD, CLA2A, or sorry, the LA2A optical compressor. The reason why it sounds so good and why I use it so much and why I enjoy it so much is because it's obviously emulating the LA2A compressor, which uses optical components within the hardware component. It uses optical components, and these optical components actually have to heat up, which then brings a certain kind of grittiness or harmonic brightness to the mix. Because it's taking a long time to heat up, the signal is delayed by a few milliseconds, and when that signal then returns back outputted, output signal path, the delay causes a certain amount of harmonic distortion, which is why people go for certain compressors, and it's just like, wow, this compressor makes the mix sound so much fatter, fuller, and usually this is the reason for it. And this is something that I think a lot of us overlook. Like I said, it was definitely something I overlooked when I first started making music. So I just thought I would tell you about a certain technique that you can use to just learn a bit more about the plugins that you're using and the effect that they have on the overall mix. So to do that, you want to just get yourself a track. This is a track that I'm just working on at the moment. So what you want to do is you want to get a track, duplicate that track, and in Ableton you want to open up your utility plugin and just click these two buttons over here, which inverts the phase of the left and the right channel. And essentially what this is doing is it's flipping the phase over, and when I press play, both of the tracks are actually going to cancel each other out. Now, the reason it's doing that is because the phase is obviously inverted, which means the peaks and troughs are essentially canceling each other out. Now, you can see that as soon as I start to, let's literally by one, you're going to see that there's a little bit of a difference. And this is because I'm obviously shifting the phase, I'm shifting the dynamics, I'm shifting the frequency content out of phase, or I'm shifting the phase along in regards to obviously the phase of this track, or vice versa. And this is a great way of really highlighting what a certain plugin, or the effect a certain plugin is going to have on the sound. So let's take a really easy example to understand, and this is the Waves multiband compressor C6. So when I put C6 on, let's say this one over here, and I bring it to a full reset, so essentially this should be fully reset. I've not done anything. I've not touched anything. There's nothing going on within the multiband compressor. So it's at its default state. But as you can see, when I press play, you're going to see a massive jump in what you will hear. Now, essentially, this is showing you what the compressor is doing at its default. As soon as you just insert it, no parameters change, no nothing. This is essentially what it is doing to your mix. And this is a great way of understanding your plugins and then being able to implement them in mastering. And I think this is one of the key things that makes a mastering engineer so great, is that he understands his tools, and he knows his tools to such a degree that he knows when to use them and how to use them, and in what part of the signal chain he will want to use them in. So essentially, if I was mastering a track and let's say that bass was a bit too full, but the highs were lacking a little bit, but I didn't want to, add a saturator or anything like that, I could go ahead, put the C6 on my track and, just control my low end like that, just for argument's sake. And then within the mix, my low end would be controlled, but because of the effect, that the plugin is going to have at its default state, it's obviously going to bring some harmonic distortion to the mix. So I won't have to add as much saturation, or if any, to the mix, because I'm obviously controlling my low end frequencies while still adding some harmonic distortion to brighten up the sound a bit more. And this is why, it's so important to understand, what your tools are doing and why they're doing them. So again, I can show you that, certain tools like the Fab Filter Pro Q2 is extremely linear, which means that there is no harmonic distortion. So when I press play on the track, you're going to hear that there's going to be nothing. But as soon as I start moving this, just like the volume, you're going to start hearing, obviously the frequency content come back. And this is obviously, again, because I'm messing around within the phase of the tracks that I'm using. This is, again, just an example of showing you or getting you to think of how your plugins are impacting your mix before you even do anything within the plugin. And I think this is a really good way of understanding compression a bit more. I think it's very difficult to really truly understand what you're doing when you're compressing. But essentially, if I do, let's say, medium compression with some short attack and a medium release, well, before I'll do that, I'll show you. Ableton's compressor is very linear. It doesn't make a sound. Obviously, the CLA 2A compressor from Waves is a bit different. Let me just bring it back to full reset. Or I can do PA default. Full reset, definitely. And you can see, compared to the C6, it's not as bad, but there's still a little bit of harmonic distortion. And this is why I use this compressor a lot, because I think it's a very good compressor in that it does its job very well, but also it brings a little bit of that harmonic distortion. Not too much, so I can just go in and add a few more EQs and saturators if needed. So again, compared to Ableton's compressor, you can even go in and talk about, let's say, Waves, C1, and it's also very linear. Nothing changes. Now, why I say it is so good to understand compression is because when you have your two tracks, phase inverted and everything like that, you can truly understand what the compressor is actually doing to the track. Because essentially, when you start messing about with the parameters, when you have this technique active or implemented, you can see the result of what you're trying to do. And let's see over here. So the difference that you've just heard there is essentially the kind of compression that is happening within the settings that I've chosen. Because obviously like I've still got my settings, all set up and everything, but because I haven't selected my threshold, these things aren't going to activate. But as soon as I start moving the threshold down, you're going to start hearing the compression that is being applied to the mix. So that dynamic difference is essentially what is happening to the mix. So if I mute that, you can now see or hear that little dynamic increase or dynamic, compression is essentially what's happening to the entire track. So yeah, I thought that would be a very good video to just discuss and talk about ways in which you can truly understand the tools that you're using, which will obviously help you become better mixing engineers and obviously help make your music a lot better. I think, again, this is something we overlook a lot, and we just get caught up with a lot of, all this SSL, emulated plugins that Waves was releasing or anything like that, like the solid state plugins. I've never used them, unfortunately, but all of these plugins are trying trying to emulate certain hardware compressors or hardware EQs, and it's just a good idea to truly understand what these plugins are doing before you start messing about with the parameters, because then you can get a better understanding for how you want to progress your track or how you want to mix your track. And again, this is why I say it's one of the key things that makes a mastering engineer so great. Anyway, I'm going to leave the video over here. I'm going to end it over here. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, comment down below. If you didn't, well, comment down below and tell me why you didn't, and I'll try obviously improve on whatever you think I'm lacking at or whatever. But again, I hope you did enjoy this video. I hope you found it useful. I mean, I know I certainly did when I found out this information, because it got me to think a bit more critically in what I'm doing when it comes to mixing my music. So again, if you want to see more of these videos, smash that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that little bell button on the side to get a notification when I release another one of these videos. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.